Data, or it didn't happen, right? As speech language professionals, it is crucial that we collect data to know exactly how our clients are doing. Or is it? Today, we are going to explore the questions of how much data do you actually need to collect and how can you streamline your data collection processes. I'm Carrie Clark, and on this episode of Speech and Language Kids podcast, we're going to dive into how not to take data during your therapy sessions, and I'm going to show you what to do instead. But before we get to that, I do want to do a couple of quick announcements because we have a lot of really fun stuff coming up. So last week on the podcast, I announced that we are doing a no prep December challenge. And that is going to be that for the full month of December, you are challenged to not prep or plan any activities for your therapy sessions and to not collect data, although I'll give you once. You can collect full data one time during the month of December. But today we're going to talk about what to do on the other days of your no prep challenge when you are not collecting that data so that you still are being compliant and you're still able to do effective therapy. So that is coming up in December. We are doing all of this prep work to get you ready. If you did not listen to the podcast last week about the challenge, I encourage you to go back now and do that. Listen to that episode. And then in addition, we have a webinar coming out on November 25th. So if you are listening to this as soon as it gets released onto Apple Podcasts and Spotify, then that is today. So November 25th is the webinar. We are going to be talking about the No Prep Challenge and giving you all of the rules and the tools and helping you get set up. So you'll find that inside the hub. We also have a webinar coming up on December 6th inside the hub that is going to be how does no prep therapy look in real life? Because that's kind of the whole point of this, right? If we can't make it work in real therapy sessions, then why are we even trying? So our December webinar will be taking you in depth on some actual examples and getting you really going with that. So all of that is located inside the hub. We also have our Black Friday sale coming up the 29th of November through the 2nd of December. We're in 2024 if you're listening back to old episodes. That's coming up. We're going to have the lifetime membership and the core language program on sale for 20% off. And we're going to be offering a free 1 month in the hub, a free 1 month trial, longer trial than we normally do, for anyone who's a new member to the hub. So I actually realized that I didn't say when we started these podcasts back up, I didn't say what the hub was. I've been talking about it, and I am currently live inside the hub as I'm recording this podcast. I see Kiera and Vivian and Caroline and Basimihar. Welcome, all of you. I see some highs in the chat there. Hello. So this is how it works. I have a community. It is housed within our membership site. And so this is a website you can go to, hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. But it is so much more than just a community. We have a discussion board where you can come in and ask questions and get help with your tough cases. But we also have resources on how to choose appropriate skills to work on with students based on their age, their diagnosis, or what symptoms or challenges they're having. And then we have a whole therapy activity section. So this is where we take each skill that we've covered and we break it down into a step-by-step plan of exactly how to teach that skill to a child. And I have gone through and broken down each of those skills into step-by-steps. Then I give you a video to show you how to do the therapy, and I give you a no prep therapy kit that will give you exactly what you need to practice the skill with the student. And so that is super crucial to being able to do a no prep challenge, is having those no prep resources that you can print out and grab right now and have them ready to use for the whole month of December. So all of that is inside the hub. It is $25 a month to get the full membership, although there's a free plan where you can just get some of our freebies, you can use the discussion board, and you can listen to me record these podcasts live like my friends are doing now, and you get that information a week ahead of when those podcasts actually release. So that's fun too. Keep in mind, if you are a student, grad student, undergraduate, then you get a free year in the hub with all of those resources I just mentioned. So that's available. And then if you have lost any of your therapy materials in a disaster, whether it's hurricane or wildfires or flooding. We had a member once say that they had bats get into their school and the bats pooped on everything and they had to throw everything out. So we counted that too. So if you've lost any of your materials in a disaster, you get 6 months for free to get you back on your feet. So that's over at hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. But I want to jump into this idea of data and how much data do we need, and are we over data-ing ourselves? And that's right, I just made up a word. It's data-ing. I like it. Okay, so I want to talk about a thing at my children's school called Seco Sheets. And if you're in here with me on the live, I'm going to show you just a quick glance. This is a Seco sheet, okay? So it's called check-in, check-out. And check-in, check-out is an amazing strategy that I love and that I am a big proponent of, and that is checking in with kids throughout the day to see how they're doing on a skill that they're working on. So for my school, we do Seco Sheets, my children's school, we do Seco Sheets for behavior plans. So if the child's on a behavior plan, they have a page where they can check in with the teacher and see how their behavior is doing, right? I love this. I love the idea of these check-ins. I don't necessarily love the way it's being implemented though, and let me tell you why. So I'm not gonna like really put this online or anything because this has my kid's name on it, but this page that's in front of me that comes home every day has 48 boxes on it in which the teacher has to give a rating between 1 to 2 or 0 to 2 on how well they did at being safe, being respectful, being a learner, and being able to redirect, okay? And so for each and every activity they do throughout the day, the teacher is expected to stop after that activity and give a rating based on how many reminders they had to give the student to get that job done, right? To be safe or a learner or whatever it was. So I've seen these come home and I thought they were a lot, but I was like, okay, this is the way they're implementing this at this school, great. And then it really hit home how over the top this process has become when I went to a field trip. So we were on a field trip. Where were we going? I think we went to the agriculture park with this class, and I was just tagging along as a chaperone. And the teacher had a clipboard for the Seco sheet, but she had 9 children in her class that had behavior plans. And so she had 9 clipboards stacked up her arm like you see at some restaurants where they carry the plates, if you know what I'm talking about. She had 9 clipboards stacked up her arm. So every time she had to stop and give someone a reminder to do their job, she had to mark that on their clipboard. So she's sorting through clipboards, trying to mark down who had what reminders and how many they needed. Meanwhile, she's lost 3 other kids because she was trying to mark all this down. And then at the end of the day, she has to go through, tally all these up, pull off the carbon copy, file that away, and then give them their page to take home. And it was too much. She was doing an amazing job, and she was just going with it because she knew that was what these children needed. But I think it really drives home the point of how data can sometimes be too much. Yes, we need data. Yes, we need to make sure all of our decisions are data driven. That we're not just saying, I really love having children do this and not really paying attention to if it's helping. That's not what we want, right? But we also don't want a teacher with 9 clipboards up her arm walking through a farm trying to mark down reminders or taking time away from class. Because when you are taking notes, when you are jotting down your data, when you are so focused on the data piece of it, you are not fully present with the students and you are not able to give them the best therapy possible. So I challenge you during our No Prep Challenge for December, or if you're listening to this in the future, do it whichever month is coming up next. But I challenge you to see if you can go a full month with only taking data once. All right, I see a question in the chat. Let me check that real quick. Oh, just amazing. Yes, thank you, Caroline. Awesome. Okay, so I want you to think about how often do you really need to collect data? Do you need to collect data on every time that they say their sound or practice their skill? Or could you do it once a session, or once a week, once a month, once a year? There is a sweet spot here, right? But I want you to think about and be really honest with yourself about how often or how much progress that your students make. Do they honestly make such fast progress that their performance next week is significantly different than their performance this week? For most of our children, the answer is no. If you have a child who is making that fast a progress, you're probably just banging right through the therapy and they're going to be dismissed pretty quick because they're picking it up. They just needed that extra boost and they're good. But most of our students need that repetition. They need to practice a skill over and over and over. And so in my opinion, my sweet spot for collecting data is once per month. If I collect really good data once per month, then I have an idea of how fast they're progressing and about how we're doing. And honestly, that's about as often as it needs to be collected. Now, like I said, there's going to be some students who are different, some students who make faster progress, and you're going to want to collect that. If you are working in private practice and you have them on home programs where they're practicing at home, that might look different. But especially if you're in the schools and you're seeing them once, twice a week, and they've got all these other skills that they're trying to learn at school too, you're probably not making such fast progress that you need it more often than that, okay? But I know that can feel uncomfortable, especially if you are already in the mindset of, I have to collect data on every single time they say their S sound with me present. And that can be kind of a mindset trap, okay? But you have to remember that the copious amounts of time spent on data collection reduces the quality of your therapy. If you are so head down on the data and trying to take all these notes and do all this, then you are not in that moment where you say, oh, that was so close. Look, just tweak it this way. Oh, that one. Okay, stick with that. Now do it like this. Okay, that's the one. That's perfect, right? Those are the moments that we need. Those are the moments that capture our students' progress and get them to that next step. That's what we want, okay? So I only collect data once per month. But what about the rest of the month, right? I know that is the next question coming because that is always the next question when I start talking about data and I say once per month. So just because you're not collecting your full detailed data on every repetition does not mean that we don't want to know what's going on, okay? Especially if you have a caseload nearing 100 students, because I hear that all the time from our followers. They're saying, oh yeah, I've got 70 kids, 80 kids, 90 kids. I have had some people say they have over 100 kids. There is no way on earth I'm going to remember each and every session and how that student did and what we worked on and what cues I used, which ones worked, which ones didn't, what I was thinking during that session, right? Because sometimes you go, man, next week, I'm really going to bump us up to sentences. We're ready for sentences. And then you get to next week and you forgot, right? So we still need to collect some amount of information, but it doesn't have to be a full set of data where we're taking data on every repetition, okay? So here's what I do for I call it daily notes versus full data. So full data is once a month, right? And that's, okay, we're going to do 20 reps. I'm going to write down yes or no on each one. I'm going to get a percentage. That's full data. Daily notes then is on a scale of 1 to 5. How did the student do today on this skill? That's it, okay? So if you are inside the hub, you will find my daily notes page inside the data section of the Way, so you can see that. And I will put links to these things in the notes and all of that, so you have access to that. But I have a notes sheet that just says the date, and then what goal we worked on, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I just circle one. And I have a key that tells me what those different numbers mean. So this is rubric style grading, if you've heard that term before. So 1 is they did not demonstrate the skill at all. No matter how hard I tried, could not get an S out of that child at all. Number 2 is demonstrated it occasionally or with maximal prompting. 3 is demonstrated the skill half the time or with some prompting. 4 is demonstrated the skill most of the time or with minimal prompting. And 5 is demonstrated the skill independently. So I just say, okay, we worked on S in single words. They were at a 3. And then underneath that, I have just a quick spot where you can jot a quick note, such as, I used the cue to keep their tongue behind their teeth. We watched in the mirror. Okay, just so that you remember next time, or go to sentences next time. That's one I use a lot when I'm trying to remember, okay, I'm ready to move them up, but we didn't get to it today. I want to make sure I have that in my notes. And that's it. And I do this during the session. I do not let that student leave until I have circled their number, written the date, what we worked on, and any cues or notes that I want to add. And sometimes I don't have cues or notes, and that's okay. Especially if I had fewer students on my caseload, I wouldn't need as many notes because I'll remember it better. But that does a couple of things. Number one, it works for attendance because I can remember who I saw which days, and it shows me what we worked on. And then, like I said, tells me, okay, approximately how are we doing? If I see that this week we're at a 3, next week we're at a 4, and the next week we're at a 5, I'm going to go, wow, it's time to collect some good data here because I feel like we're really moving through this. Or if I see, well, we were at a 3 and now we're at a 2 and now we're at a 1. Okay, what's happening here? Do we need to change our services? I can still see the trends without having to collect data that takes up more of my time and takes time away from the therapy. Yeah, Jocelyn's saying, love that. Good. Okay, so that's all I'm taking during my daily notes during my sessions that are not my data sessions, right? My just every other session. If you want that daily notes page, that is available inside the hub, along with a full video on how to implement all of this. So you can find that at hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. But I want to answer some more questions about this because I know you have them. So if you are inside the hub with me now, watching me record this live, I want you guys to type your questions into the chat. I see quite a few of you. Hey guys, welcome. So you can pop those into the chat and I'll take those as we get along. But I'm going to answer the 2 biggest questions that I get, and then I'm going to tell you kind of how this looks in real life, okay? So the first question I always hear is, but what about data for Medicaid or billing or whatever else? If we are only collecting rubric-style data for a session, just on a scale of 1 to 5, so they're getting 1 rating score, how do we use that to submit our Medicaid billing or insurance billing or whatever else, okay? Because most of the time, those providers require that we have numeric data. I want a percentage, they say. Well, good news. We can make a percentage out of this. 4 out of 5 is 80%. 3 out of 5 is 60%. So we can still turn that rubric style data into a percentage for the Medicaid billing. I am a big fan of assigning a percentage range to my score. So if I say a 5 is 90 to 100%, I say a 4 is 70 to 90%, and then I give it an actual range. And so then when I go submit my billing, I might say student performed between 90 and 100% on the skill today, or 80 to 100%, however my range is. And then I just give them a range. But here's the thing. I am not an expert on billing. This is not legal advice. I cannot give you legal advice. The thing I have noticed is that every version of Medicaid is different. Every system that you put it in is asking for different things. It should be uniform across the board, but it's not. So you will need to go to your system and figure out what they're going to require. If you can make it work with this 1 to 5 scale, awesome. If they say, absolutely not, this is garbage, how dare you? Then you say, Carrie made me do it, and what can I do instead? And then figure out what's the least amount of data that they're going to require for you to get your billing done so that you can spend the rest of that time on the therapy, okay? So that is my advice there. As long as you are still taking that detailed data at least once a month, you're still going to be able to keep them on track in therapy and make progress in therapy and have all of your decisions be data-based, but you're not spending all of your time getting the data instead of doing the therapy. Okay? All right, next question. What if my employer requires the data on every repetition? And this one makes my heart hurt because I hear this one too, where people say, well, that's a requirement at my job. I am required to collect data on every single time they say that sound in my sessions. Well, I want you to tell them I said that's silly. Okay, don't really do that. They will be so mad at me, and then I'll get all these angry phone calls. I don't want that. But in seriousness, this is not best practice. It does not help the kids for you to be taking that much data. It does not help you to do good therapy. This is not supporting anyone. So if that requirement is being forced on you, If your employer is requiring that you take data on every single repetition the child does in therapy, then your job now becomes being an advocate. You need to be an advocate for yourself. You need to be an advocate for your students or your clients. And you need to say, this is not working. I am not able to give good quality therapy when I have to spend so much time on data. What can we do instead? And then you can bring some of these options to the table. You can say, hey, look at this rubric style data. This is what other therapists are using in other districts, and it is proving very effective. Could we try this on a trial period and come back and revisit this? Okay, so that is your job now, is to be an advocate for yourself, because you can't go on doing that. That's too much. Okay? All right, other questions that you guys have inside the hub here for those of you watching live. Okay, so let's talk about what this looks like in practice. So this is the way I do it. Obviously, you can do this different ways, but this is the way that I go about running my sessions, go about saving me time, and this is the way I recommend you do it for the December challenge, the No Prep December challenge, and then see how you like it, and then you can tweak it to make it yours, right? But here's what we do. So at the beginning of the month, you're going to choose 1, 2, or maybe 3 skills, but I'd like you to keep it down to 1 or 2 if possible, that you're going to target for each student for that month, okay? Our students don't make fast progress when we work on 7 things at once. They just don't. It's not going to work. If you have so many goals that you can't narrow it down to 1 to 3, then you need to revisit the goals, because then they have too many goals. So at the beginning of the month, you're going to say, okay, we're going to work on this 1 skill, or maybe these 2 skills, or maybe these 3 skills if you have a lot of minutes, or it's a student who makes fast progress, okay? Then you're going to take the first 3 weeks of the month to work on those skills with as little data as possible. You're only going to take that rubric style data on your daily notes page that you got from the hub, and you're only going to do that 1 through 5, write a quick note. That's all you're going to do. And you're going to do it in the sessions. Do it before they leave the room. You can say, wow, you've been so good. You get 2 minutes of free time at the end. And then you do your data while they're doing their free time, okay? So take your data on that, just the 1 number, 1 numeral that you picked, okay? And then the last week of the month, I save this for my data week. So you're going to take your full data during that last week of the month. And here's what you're going to do. They're going to come in and you're going to go, oh, it's a data day. I know it's not very fun, but we have to do it to make sure we're making progress. You can get them involved in the data. You can have them draw it on a bar graph to see how they're doing. Lots of ways to make data less painful. But you are going to say, okay, I need you to practice this skill 20 times and I'm going to take data on every rep. Or we're going to do this 5-minute language sample and I'm going to tally how many times you blank, because that's how the goal is written. Whatever your goal is, that's how you're going to record it, right? And so if it only takes you 10 minutes to get that data, then you can go back to just some regular therapy at the end of the session. But all of my students know the last week of the month is data week, and we've got to get that data to see how we're doing before we can play the games and have fun. So that's what you do the last one. Now, what I would recommend is while you're collecting that data, your brain is already going. I know it is. Your brain is already thinking about what to work on next month. You're thinking, okay, we haven't quite got this one. We need to keep hitting it. Or, wow, we're doing so well with this. I think we're ready to move on to conversation. You're already thinking those things in your head. So don't wait and try to remember it later and write it down. While you're in the session, while you're taking your data, pull out a new monthly planning page that you can also get from the hub and jot down the next month's 1 to 3 skills. So that when you go to just prep for the month, you already know what you're working on. You don't have to think back and say, now what did I want to do with Johnny? How was he doing? And go back through the data. You just do it in the moment. You do it during the session. Again, if you need to give them a couple free minutes so you can write it all down and gather your thoughts, do it, because that's what we need to make our therapy effective. The progress you're going to make in those first 3 weeks makes up for the extra time you're doing on data and planning for the last week. Okay? All right, what are you guys thinking? Those of you inside the hub, does this sound good? Does this sound terrifying? Are you overwhelmed just thinking about it? Because this is what I want. I want this to happen for the December challenge, or whichever month you're doing it. I want you to promise yourself you're only going to take full data that one time, or maybe not at all, because December is usually a short month in the schools where we've got a holiday break. And so you might only have a couple of weeks in therapy, and you could just go a couple weeks with this rubric style data and take your full data when they get back from break. So that's a possibility. But that's what I want, is no data or just one day of data on your full sessions. And then also this idea of not prepping and planning during the month. You're going to grab some stuff, stick them in their speech folders before the month starts so that you can spend that whole month on just doing therapy and maintaining the rest of your life through the hectic holidays. All right, Sophie Ann says, this sounds good and helps me to get organized. Thank you. You're welcome. Good. I'm glad this helps. Okay, so if you need help, if you would like some support on making this happen, we have a lot of different ways that I can help you. The first way is just to go into the hub and take The Way. So The Way is my series of videos and handouts and links and all the things you need to follow my system of doing speech therapy. This is the way that I do speech therapy. So it's all laid out inside the hub, including this data piece. We have the full data page, or the daily data pages, and we have the full monthly data. We have the monthly planning pages, and we have information about how to set up your speech folders to get all this going, and then the no prep kits that you can grab to do for this, okay? So that's inside the hub. You can go to hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. And so you'll have all of that there, or join us on the webinars that we're going to be doing either the 25th of November or the 6th of December. This is 2024, in case you've caught on to this one later. But the webinars, we're going to go into more of that as well, or just pop into the hub, into the discussion board, and ask questions. But that discussion board is available for free for anyone. You just have to have a username and password. So use that as well. All right, Caroline says, great, helps so much. Thank you. You're welcome, Caroline. Okay, thank you all so much. Don't forget to subscribe. We've got more amazing ideas and strategies and tips and tricks coming to you every week now on the new Speech and Language Kids podcast. So subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and I'll have more coming next week. We're going to talk about groups, I believe. So we'll be talking about group therapy and how to do that as no prep. So that'll be a good one too. All right. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I will see you next time on the podcast. Bye.